To see the fully uncut version of this video, head over to patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons.
What's that like to live deliciously? Chaos reigns.
Please don't scream.
Nah, Sid, don't you blame the movies. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
What's going on? My name is Jonjo Lyons, and today I'm here to present to you my review for Ostermontag. Written and directed by Heiko Fipper, Ostermontag stars all of these lot. When Heiko confesses his feelings to his stepsister, Fabian, she rejects him and puts her twin sister Nicole in her place. He snaps and plans to kidnap, torture and murder Nicole to end the mix-ups. And that's all I'll say for now, because after that the synopsis gets a tad spoilery. Ostermontag is a film that was recommended to me quite a while ago by one of you lot. I can't remember who it was, so if it was you, thank you, I think, and let me know down below. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you. The murderous acts perpetrated by the antagonist of this film are some of the worst that I've ever seen and ever covered for the channel. When you see the quality of the film, you're going to question how bad it can actually get, but trust me, it takes a hard left turn at one point and gets so dark, I have to warn you early. As I've said before, if you continue to watch this video, you are agreeing to welcome these images and concepts into your mind, allowing me to forego any responsibility for the trauma you're about to be subjected to, especially the ending. Fucking hell. So yeah, there you go. So if you're still with me after this point, that's your choice, okay? That's what I'm trying to say. Are we all fucking clear on that? Yeah? Get ready to lose any and all faith you once held in humanity. This is Ostermontag. The movie begins with a warning that reads, if watching this movie should cause you discomfort or nausea, we ask you stop watching this tape immediately for your own good. Put your feet up and listen to relaxing music. Remember, it is only a movie. I also want to say something similar right here. If watching this review should cause you discomfort or nausea, I ask that you continue watching all the way through to the end, multiple times. I don't care if you're covered in every bodily fluid that you could produce by the time that this finishes. I need this. This is all I have. Congratulations if you have other options, but I don't, okay? So just tough it out. We then get another wall of text which reads, the movie you are about to see is an exact copy of a videotape found in the spring of 1996. Just a couple of hours after its discovery, even before an inspection could take place, the tape was stolen from police custody and sold on the black market. This tape could have helped solve the case of a girl who went missing in 1991. Instead, the case remains open to this day. In consideration of the rareness of this document, we ask for tolerance of the picture and sound quality which does not meet broadcast standards. Well, what the fuck does that mean? Is this the real tape or a reproduction? If it's a reproduction, why consider the rarity of the product? We haven't even gotten to the film yet and you're already making 0 sense. I've got to say, I'm pretty excited. Cut to some bloke setting up what looks like a romantic dinner. As in voiceover, he explains he's invited his love Fabian over, but instead Nicole is coming. We see him popping something in one of the drinks as he says this will ensure once and for all the peace in their relationship. It seems that Fabian and Nicole are twin sisters, and when Fabian can't be to deal with seeing this brother, she sends Nicole over in her place. Well, my man ain't having none of that anymore and is gonna make sure it never happens again. He says he hates their mother as all she wanted was his father, and even though they're half siblings, he knows what makes Fabian's wet. It's signing up to patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons. She loves that. Cut to the man tying up Nicole and drawing a knife. He says he was sad as he waited a couple of hours for her, but she didn't arrive. That she was jealous of him and Fabian. That she ran away. He then says get the camera out and starts stabbing her with a needle. And not in a very nice place. He then whips her a bunch, gets out his knife and says goodbye to Nicole.
Leb wohl, Nicole.
Cut to the opening credits as we see this woman led out of an apartment as the noises of people in pain can be heard. Cut to this fella getting chased down some stairs. He quickly overpowers them and cuts half of one of their faces off and the other guy's hand. And then the scene just ends. Yeah, it's gonna be one of those movies. Cut to someone ringing a doorbell. The resident asks who it is and they say the police. They offer their badge and the resident opens the door. The officer asks the man if he's been harassed in the last 3 hours and gives him a number to call if he is. The officer explains that this man is living in the former residence of a psychopath who escaped from the madhouse. There's a possibility he might want to return to his old dwelling, so he must shut and lock the door. Cut to the phone ringing and some truly sensational acting.
Ich wollte Sie warnen.
Wie, was waren, wovor waren?
Ja, mein Bruder, also Ihr Vormittag.
Yeah?
Ostermontag is the type of movie that this channel was made for. I'm so happy. The sister of the psychopath calls the men to warn them of her brother's escape, and so they invite her up. Cut to the half-sister being let into the apartment and introduced to these lot. Pinkfest asks her to tell her story and we get this beautiful transition. Michelle Gondry, eat your mum out. Eternal sunshine of the spotless mind. More like eternal shot of the spotless job. We see the sister approaching the flat, getting buzzed in and then heading up. Her brother watches her through the peephole, then grabs some tights and swigs a beer before opening up. Cut to the living room covered in adult films and other such things, and then to the sister tied up. The brother then draws for a knife, sharpens it like a madman and goes on a rant about the sisters tricking him, saying Fabienne disappeared 5 years ago. He tells the sister the pain Fabienne went through was destined for her and that he recorded the entire ordeal. He says she's going to watch the whole thing but will never find out what happened to Fabienne, but before that he's going to cut her to pieces. Cut to sometime later as the brother says he has to leave for a short while on an errand. He says nobody knows she's there and tells her to behave like a good girl. We then watch as he pretends to leave, closing the door and listening out for movement. The sister falls off the sofa, struggling against her bindings for a bit, then making her way across the living room floor before the brother makes himself known and kicks the shit out of her.
Hat Mami dir nicht gezeigt, wie man sich benimmt?
Cut to him dragging her to the bathroom, dumping her in the bath and pissing on her. The doorbell rings and so he punches her and tells her to keep quiet. And these punches seem f***ing brutal, man.
Du hältst das Maul!
I know every aspect of this film has been awful so far, but the sound design on those punches is pretty f***ing crunchy. Anyway, he goes to open the door but finds no one there as we hear someone running, implying it was a prank. He shuts the door and we cut to him having a shave. He wipes some foam on the unconscious woman and laughs to himself, telling her to rise and shine. We then cut to another interesting shot where he shows Nicole the tape of Fabienne's time with him 5 years ago. What's interesting about it is that the hand holding the tape seems to be filmed on a green screen while the footage of Nicole plays behind it. A similar thing was done with the hunting knife in the opening scene, and I'm just wondering why. Is this a pickup shot that they couldn't get in the normal way because he couldn't hold the camera and do this at the same time? Whatever the reason, it's f***ing bizarre. He then puts the tape on for Nicole and forces her to watch. And I unironically really like the music here. Could someone sample that and make a grime beat, please? I'd really appreciate it. We then awkwardly cut to a knife about to press the doorbell and then back to the living room as the man says he's now going to erase the tape. The doorbell goes, but when Heiko answers again, no one is there. He screams at Nicole saying it must be one of her friends when it goes off once more. He looks through the peephole when the visitor makes himself known. Now that is a striking look. What a Heiko then inexplicably wraps the fabric around her mouth and grabs a knife to face the man, but he's nowhere to be found. He then goes back inside but fails to close the door properly, allowing the man to enter. Heiko then pops Nicole on the bed, slaps her some more as this fella hides in another room. He then runs out of the apartment again with a knife and sprints down the stairs. Cut to the man approaching Nicole, knocking her out, flipping her over and attempting to pull his junk out in another series of weirdly interesting shots when he's interrupted by Heiko. The fight then spills into the bathroom where Heiko is stabbed to f***. He spits up a bunch of blood when Nicole enters the room with a cleaver. The intruder tells her she hasn't got the guts when she proves otherwise, chopping his head off. And I just want to prepare you. Check out the special effects here. Jesus fucking Christ, what did I just see? This film has the worst effects of any movie I've ever seen in my entire life. Truly abysmal. I fucking love it. The tape finishes recording as we cut back to Pinkfest saying what a weird story that was and how that clown better watch out. Cut to Heiko pulling stitches out of his stomach and laughing about it, then back to the living room as Pinkfest tells Nicole she better stay there tonight. Yeah, you know the house where you were very nearly and killed to death by two separate men, then beheaded one of them. I'm sure this property holds no traumatic value for you, you sour-faced cunt. Cut to Nicole being shown to her bed by lantern light as the bulb is broken. The door is shut, and as Nicole blows out the light, we see a dead body in the corner of the room. Cut to Heiko breaking out of an air shaft into the flat where he's greeted by Pinkvest. He tells him Nicole was there and the pair laugh before cutting to him waking Nicole up. He then sews her lips together and gives her a slap.
Du wolltest mich letztes Mal fertig machen? Du wolltest mich fertig machen? Wolltest du das?
The men drag her into the bathroom and piss on her when the doorbell goes again. All three men punch her up as Pinkvest answers the door and lets a woman in from earlier. They then have a drinking party in the living room for a bit. Heiko asks this fella why he didn't participate in the bathroom, and he nervously says he doesn't know. The group then beat him to death. You should have picked on her, mate. If in doubt, urinate on your hostage, as my dear old dad used to say before he was tragically raped to death by a pack of rabid sea manatees. I tried to tell him not to get into the tank, but oh no, Mr. Look at my c***y mohawk always knows best. Imagine being 6 years old and seeing your father's corpse floating face down in a tank full of blood and manatee c***. It really leaves a mark. Not to mention the lifetime ban from SeaWorld. Anyway, where were we? Pinkvest then says he has something in his teeth, so bites off the bloke's finger, burns the soggy end and uses it as a toothpick. They then go to take him to the basement, stopping in the hall to beat him some more as Heiko says he's squirting like a champion. Insert typical "that's what I said to your mum" joke, because I did. Because she does. Why do you think she's got the set of rubber sheets in her closet? Much easier to clean. Just give it a once over with a squeegee and you're sorted. The men then head to the bedroom saying they're going to play blind man's bluff, getting Nicole out of the closet. Cut to this weird black and white shot as the men cut her eyelids off and then drag her to the door. They then play blind man's bluff with a needle in Nicole's eyes. I don't like that. For a film with terrible effects, that was a little too effective. They then take her to the bathroom where Heiko proceeds to cut her f***ing tits off. Right the f*** off her body and give each of them a little kiss. Jesus Christ. He tells Nicole not to worry as this won't kill her. We get a screen wipe and then the men dump her onto a lit stove to cauterize her chest wounds. This movie just went from 0 to 100 so quickly I think I need a little breather. Cut to the living room as the women say they're running out of steam when Heiko enters. He asks if they're gonna bow out and they say no, but he just beats them to death anyway. And here's another little detail that I didn't notice until now. The brunette has one of those robot voice things that you have to use if you don't have a voice box. What a weird little wrinkle to include. Anyway, Heiko f***ed him up. Cut to Heiko walking the brunette on a leash and tying her to a pipe, and then to the men binding the blonde. They then take turns running through their house, giving the women a kicking as they go. Cut to the men bagging up the brunette and clubbing her half to death. Cut to them blindfolding the blonde and leading her to the stairwell where they place her face down on the edge of a step and stamp on the back of her head. This movie's crazy. How much further could it go? That is truly the most repulsive thing I have ever seen in my entire life. They then take her to the basement, clean up and take a break. Cut to Heiko filling up the bathroom sink when he gets Pink Vest to come in and then drowns him. He then draws for the Hoover and calls out for his other mate, who, get this, he kills by shoving the Hoover down his throat and sucking his blood out. Can't do that. Can't do that. Anyway, Heiko then walks away and the film cuts to credits. But if you thought that would be the end, you'd be wrong, as we then cut to the videotape of what Heiko mistakenly did to his love Fabienne. And yes, it's fucking awful. If there's ever been an uncut review to watch on Patreon, this is the one. Okay. Deep breaths, everyone. Here we go. Cut to static and then to Heiko covering Fabienne's face with a stocking and drawing for his mean as fuck looking hunting knife. He then cuts deep into her back multiple times, producing buckets of blood. He then gives the old ham sandwich a squeeze before pulling a gun out and sticking it in her and then pulling the trigger, blowing her spine right the fuck out of her back. Making the term blowing her back out horribly literal. So then, Heiko, what's the next step? I see. Then he goes up to the elbow. And then he f***s her for a bit. And when he's finally done, he comes and you see the cum rise up through the back wound. All jokes aside, that's a pretty impressive load, Heiko. I'm gonna vomit. Then we hear Heiko say, "You can go now, Steve, and I'll take it from here," and cut to him writing the name of the tape in Fabienne's blood. He puts the tape in the player and sits down and then tells the dead woman, who he thought was Nicole, that this is the last time she meddles in his affairs. He then whacks himself off to the tape, blood on the screen, and I'm just surprised there's anything left inside him. The phone rings and he lets the machine get it, only to hear the voice of Nicole asking where her sister Fabienne is. Dun dun dun! The end! Well, that is 100% the worst thing I've ever covered for the channel. The guy who made this is out of his fucking mind. Can't wait to see the next one. Ostermontag is the most shocking film I've covered in a long while, not for what it achieves, but more so for the ideas it presents. Performances, story and effects are all woefully bad, some of the worst I've ever seen, but the horrific actions the killer partakes in toward the end, though unconvincing on screen, conjure images in the mind that I'll have trouble getting rid of for some time. Starting with the story, let's see if I can't make things a bit clearer. It seems Heiko accidentally kills Fabienne and then 5 years later kidnaps Nicole after showing her the tape of what he did to Fabienne. He erases the tape, this will be important for later, and plans to torture and kill Nicole, but is interrupted by another random killer. Heiko is stabbed all the way through his body and Nicole ends up killing the intruder by chopping off his balloon head. We see her escorted out of the flat during the opening credits before being told this story later. Things get a bit dicey with the timeline here because they say Fabienne went missing in 91, then 5 years later that whole thing went down in 96, but everything else that happens in the film also seems to be set in 96. I thought at first the next part of the story took place a year later, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Anyway, it's long enough for Heiko to have completely healed from being shish kebabbed. He turns up at the flat, the people there are revealed to be in cahoots with him, they kill Nicole, then the women, and then he kills his mates. The end. In terms of the film structure, it's a bit all over the place, but not as confusing as I've been led to believe. I was really excited to dig into something that made absolutely no sense whatsoever and draw my own conclusions, but in the end it's a pretty simple and straightforward story told a little bit out of order. One thing I do really like is the placement of Fabienne's torture at the end. It's almost like an after credits extra that the filmmaker stuck in there as a prize for getting to the end of the film, if that makes sense. You spend the whole time thinking you're never going to see it as it's shown to Nicole and promptly erased. They then drop it at the end and you're subjected to a truly horrific sequence of events that somehow manage to get worse and worse and worse and worse as it goes on, with it all culminating in a giant puddle of blood and cum. What doesn't make sense to me within the narrative is how the police were able to get a hold of this tape. In the intro text, they explain that the tape featuring this murder was recovered from the crime scene, but before it could be used as evidence, it was stolen and sold on the black market. Thus, this is a reproduction. A reproduction that's rare for some reason. Don't get me started. If this is a reproduction, someone must have seen what was on the original tape, so we can assume Heiko failed to erase it, especially seeing as it was sold on the black market. Are you going to sell a blank tape on the black market? Who f***ing knows? I feel like Heiko Phippen wanted to go hard with his storyline and lore, but missed the most obviously glaring plot holes and just didn't pay enough attention to his own story, getting lost in numbers and time jumps. Chuck in the reproduction excuse to narratively mask the potato quality of the production and you're golden, even if it makes no sense to the story whatsoever. I don't know why that annoyed me so much, but it did. Moving on to the performances, they are shockingly bad. None of the victims seem bothered about what's about to happen to them, and when they are attacked, it barely registers. Add to the killers presenting themselves as petulant children, it's just annoying. They're not scary. They're irritating bullies that I couldn't wait to stop watching. I don't know what Heiko Phippen was trying to achieve with his character, but at no point did he feel like a proper threat. Then there's the gore. Good lord. It would be easy to pick on the filmmaker, as the effects featured in this film are some of the worst gore I've ever seen, but I really do have to commend him for just going ahead and doing it, giving it a go. No experience? F it. No materials to make prosthetics? Who gives a shit? Heiko gives it the good old college try, and while that ends with 99% of the film's effects looking like arse, you've still got to hand it to the man. He tried. To be fair though, I'm actually kind of glad that's the case because of what happens in the film. The knife fighting and the final scene in particular. If these scenes were completed with any sort of competence, I think it would have made for something that might have even been a bit too much for me. Maybe, probably not, but you know what I mean. That being said, your brain does fill in the blanks, and just the idea of what's going on alone is a horrific experience. Presentation wise, the film's dog shit. Terrible sound and picture with just as bad shot composition. I gotta give Heiko credit for trying his best to be creative once or twice with the transitions, but all in all, it's fucking terrible. In the end, Ostermontag is a slog of a film that is poorly made with content and even poorer taste. While the independent filmmaker in me congratulates him for giving it a go and making a film so shocking, as a film itself, it's almost unwatchable. Everything is bad, with the only thumbs up I can give being in the total lack of Heiko apparently has. It's worth seeking out if you're an amateur horror filmmaker or extreme horror completionist, but other than that, it's not one I'd recommend. So that was my review of Ostermontag. What do you lot think? This film marks the first time in a long time that I actually considered omitting one of the scenes just because of how utterly disgusting it was. I decided not to because, well, f that, but this movie genuinely contains some of the worst violence I have ever experienced on film. Speaking of which, if you want to see all of that reprehensible, abhorrent, vomiting-inducing blood and gore completely uncut and early, head over to patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons. There you can gain access to the uncut version of this review, plus others with more stuff dropping all the time. I'm currently working on a re-edited uncut version of the August Underground review, which is fun. Releasing weekly slasher comic breakdowns with plenty more stuff planned for the future. And all that can be yours for as little as $1 a month. You can pledge more, I really appreciate it, as I'm going to need to be able to afford a shitload of bleach to pour directly into my eyes. What the f***, man. Also, massive shout out to all of the patrons already on there supporting the channel. What you're doing is really life-changing for me, and I genuinely appreciate it so much. I need to find a way to get the names to come up on the screen. I did that once before and it nearly made my f***ing laptop explode, so I'll figure that out. So that's it for another week. Like the video, leave a comment, and click subscribe if you haven't already. My name's Jonjo Lyons, and did you see the amount of that came out that bird's back? Fucking hell. Congrats, Heiko. Congrats, mate.